I couldn't believe my eyes. My wedding gifts, handpicked, wrapped with love, each one holding months of dreams and memories, were being handed over to someone else. My heart pounded, and my hands shook as I watched my in-laws smile while placing my presents in another couple's arms, as if they had done nothing wrong. This can't be happening, I whispered to myself, my voice trembling with anger and disbelief. Every laugh they shared, every approving glance toward the new recipients, felt like a knife twisting in my chest. In that moment, I knew this was no accident or misunderstanding. The betrayal cut deeper than I could have imagined. I clenched my fists, my jaw tight, and silently vowed. They were going to regret this. I wasn't just hurt. I was done being powerless. What would you do if your own in-laws stole something so personal and meaningful from you? Could you forgive them? Or would you plan your own justice? Comment below and don't forget to subscribe for more shocking, true-to-life stories. Before that shocking day, my life felt perfect, or at least I thought it was. I'm Emma Carter, a 28-year-old graphic designer living in Portland, Oregon, and I had always dreamed of a simple, joyful wedding surrounded by friends and family. My fiancé, Ryan Thompson, was kind and thoughtful, always making me feel loved and cherished. I trusted his parents, Laura and Richard Thompson, completely. They were the kind of in-laws who smiled a little too warmly, complimented my outfits, and seemed genuinely supportive. In the months leading up to our wedding, I carefully selected each gift I wanted for our new life: handmade decor, meaningful keepsakes, even some family heirlooms I thought would be cherished by us forever. Laura had offered to help organize everything, so I let her take charge of gift storage. I first noticed something was wrong when I visited their house a week after the wedding. The room where the gifts had been stored was suspiciously empty. My heart sank as I asked, "Where are the gifts?" Richard shrugged, avoiding my eyes, and Laura's forced smile didn't reach her eyes. Then I found out they hadn't just taken the gifts, they had given them to another family friend, as if my love and effort meant nothing. The betrayal hit me like a freight train. I felt a storm of emotions crashing over me: humiliation, anger, and a deep, aching sadness. Every memory of planning the wedding, of carefully choosing gifts that held meaning, now felt tainted. I wanted to scream at Laura and Richard, to demand an explanation, but every time I tried, Ryan stepped in, cautiously trying to calm me, afraid of rocking the boat with his parents. I felt trapped between my love for him and the sheer injustice of what they had done. Friends and family noticed my unease, and I couldn't hide the way my voice shook whenever I talked about the gifts. Nights were the worst, lying awake, replaying the scene over and over. I could see Laura laughing, Richard patting some stranger on the back, and me, frozen in disbelief. How could people I trusted so completely betray me like this? My anger simmered, growing sharper with each passing day. I tried to confront Laura once in person, politely asking if the gifts could be returned. She smiled sweetly, an insincere warmth that made my stomach turn, and said, "Oh, Emma, it was just easier this way. No harm done." That moment was pivotal. I realized that nothing, no pleading, no gentle reminders, would bring my things back or make them feel remorse. I had to take matters into my own hands. The humiliation I felt was mingled with a spark of determination. I refused to let them get away with it. Each time I saw Laura and Richard, that spark grew stronger, turning my pain into a quiet, burning resolve. I would have my justice, and they would see exactly how wrong they had been. I started small, like a detective circling a scene. I took photos of the empty storage room, cataloged every missing item from my gift list, and compared registry confirmations. I kept a private journal of dates and casual remarks Laura had made. Her offhand, "It was easier" comment burned on replay. I quietly texted the friends who'd attended, asking if they'd noticed anything odd the day we opened presents. A few remembered Laura hovering near the boxes. One even recalled seeing the gifts carried out in plain sight. I began to watch Laura and Richard more closely, where they went, who they visited, which social events they favored. I noticed patterns: a neighbor who suddenly had new, pricey decor, a charity event where familiar wrapping paper showed up on a table. I opened a savings account in a separate name, just in case I needed funds that couldn't be traced back, and practiced staying calm. Anger would ruin the plan. I wasn't ready to act yet, but everything I did felt like laying a careful trap. The pieces were aligning. Soon, they wouldn't know what hit them. The day I struck was careful, public, and impossible to ignore. I invited everyone who had come to the wedding to what I called a thank you brunch at a local hall, friends, family, neighbors, even the couple who'd received my gifts. I told Ryan it was to celebrate married life. He looked uneasy, but came anyway. Laura and Richard accepted eagerly, their smiles already rehearsed. As people filed in, I set up a small display at the front. Photos I'd taken of the empty storage room, the registry printouts with items crossed out, and candid pictures a neighbor had sent showing boxes being carried out. I'd even printed a simple timeline of dates and texts. Laura's, it was easier among them. My hands shook as I arranged everything, but my voice was steady when I started to speak. I told the room I had something important to share. I guided everyone through the evidence calmly, like I was reading someone else's story. At first there was confusion, then murmurs, then the slow heat of recognition as faces changed. The couple who'd accepted the gifts, Mark and Jenna, looked stunned. "We thought they were donations," Jenna stammered, eyes darting to Laura. Laura's smile faltered, and Richard's jaw tightened. I watched the color drain from their faces as more guests remembered small things. Gifts that matched my registry, wrapping paper they'd seen at my wedding. When I finished, the room was quiet enough to hear a pin drop. Ryan's face had gone pale. He flinched away from his parents. Laura tried to smooth it over with nervous laughter, but the dam had broken. People started asking questions, demanding answers. Mark and Jenna, embarrassed and ashamed, handed over a decorative vase I'd made and a set of hand-stitched napkins. My work, unmistakable. The humiliation was immediate and public. Neighbors whispered, friends looked betrayed, and Laura's carefully cultivated image crumbled in front of everyone. I felt anger mixed with a strange, bright relief. The injustice was being seen. It wasn't a courtroom victory, but in that room, with witnesses and proof, their lie unraveled. I had turned my pain into truth, and watching them squirm was the closest thing to justice I'd felt in months. After the brunch, things shifted in ways I hadn't fully imagined. The embarrassment of being exposed forced Laura and Richard into awkward apologies, half-hearted, defensive, and ultimately hollow. Some family members sided with me. Others tried to play peacemaker. Ryan was angry with his parents, and angry at himself for not seeing sooner. That anger, though painful, helped me understand the tangled loyalties I'd been navigating. The revenge I'd carried out wasn't about hurting for the sake of hurting. It was a reclamation of my time, of my memories, of the tangible proof of the care I'd poured into that wedding. I learned that visibility matters. When wrongdoing happens behind closed doors, it thrives. Bringing it into the light stripped it of power. The satisfaction I felt wasn't only retribution, it was the restoration of my dignity. At the same time, I had to reconcile the cost. Pursuing justice required me to become someone meticulous and strategic, someone who watched and recorded and planned. That wasn't who I'd thought I was. I'd traded some of my softness for a sharper edge, and that had consequences. Relationships I'd expected to be permanent shifted. Conversations grew cautious. Healing, I realized, wasn't instant. It was a slow mending, made possible because I refused to let the story end with me as the victim. The moral I carry now is simple. You don't have to invite cruelty to define your life. Confronting injustice doesn't make you cruel. Sometimes it means you're brave enough to reclaim what's yours. Justice can be messy and imperfect, but taking action taught me that passivity often costs far more than confrontation ever would. Life after that day felt like stepping into clearer air. Ryan and I had difficult conversations. He apologized for not protecting me and promised transparency going forward. We set boundaries with his parents, limited visits, neutral locations for family events, and, most importantly, honesty about what we would and wouldn't tolerate. Some relatives pulled away. Others grew closer, impressed by my willingness to stand up for myself. Legally, there wasn't much to pursue. Most gifts were returned when confronted, and the items that weren't recoverable were small or sentimental rather than valuable enough to warrant a police case. I considered pressing charges for theft, but in the end I chose to focus on rebuilding rather than dragging everyone through a court battle. I cataloged what was gone, accepted the loss where necessary, and held on to the wins, my restored dignity, and the clear lesson learned by everyone involved. I started hosting small gatherings on my terms, surrounding myself with people who respected me. I also took steps to protect my future. Important documents and valuables were kept in a secure place, and I never again left sentimental items in someone else's care. The scars remained, but they didn't define me. Instead, they were reminders of what I refused to accept. Most importantly, I stopped shrinking to make others comfortable. I taught myself to speak up earlier, to trust my instincts, and to believe that sometimes the right response is not forgiveness, but firm action. The world didn't end because I exposed my in-laws, and for me, it was the start of a life where I refused to be sidelined. Sometimes taking back what's yours isn't about hurting someone else. It's about reclaiming your dignity and protecting your future. I learned that silence can be a kind of consent, and that the courage to speak up can change the course of your life. What would you have done in my place? Would you confront, forgive, or walk away? Share your thoughts below. I read every comment. If this story resonated, subscribe for more true-to-life tales of betrayal and standing up for yourself.